Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I'm Gurpreet. I'm joined by my colleague, Vaibhav. It's been a pleasure with all of you here at the Kong Summit. The last 2 days, I'm sure, has been very, very exciting. We had some bold conversations, great ideas, and a very shared sense of purpose. We are here to talk about a topic which is very close to all of us, that's enterprise modernization. So in this session, what we'll talk about is why modernization is a mandate for organizations, what are the key challenges that organizations are facing to make it to happen, and more importantly, why API and AI is absolutely pivotal for successful modernization. We'll also talk about some of the key accelerators that we have developed at Coforge, and those are meant to address the key challenges that we'll talk about it. We'll do a demo of those accelerators, and then finally we'll talk about a blueprint of what the modernization looks like, where AI and API is right at the core of it. So with that said, we'll dive in. I think the first thing is why modernization is a mandate. I think given that we've got comparatively less people, maybe I'll open it up for you. Any thoughts, ideas from your past experience in the world? Why do you think that modernization is a mandate? Don't get influenced by what is written over there, but I just want to hear it from you based on what you're doing and your engagements and your experience. Anyone wants to give a shot? No? Okay. We'll probably get going. I hope it kind of resonates with what you see in your life. So I think first things first, we are all at a stage where organizations have relentless pressure to evolve, whether it is because of customer experience, whether it is for competitive positioning, to unblock new business ideas. Customers want speed, agility, and seamless experience. And obviously, legacy systems were not really built for that purpose. So what that means is there's friction in customer engagements. It creates a friction across the entire value chain. The complexity of actually managing all those legacies are going high. The risk is going high. We will talk about compliance regulations, which is again going high, a lot because of the AI, which obviously we want to adopt. And then to innovate and to really harness the power of AI, you need real modern architectures. You want architectures to be scalable, to be composable. You want them to have cloud-native principles. Business agility is another very, very key criteria for all of the enterprises. You really want organizations to be nimble, to roll out releases very, very rapidly. You want to stay competitive. So that is where you want architectures. Sorry, that's fine, as long as it's adding some value. So yeah, sorry. So business agility, again, is very, very critical. You want organizations to stay nimble. You want them to have rapid releases. So you want your architectures to be responsive, to scale dynamically. And last but not the least, extremely important to have a modern talent workforce. Obviously, we understand in today's state, everyone wants to have modern tools, collaborative workspace for them to work. Automation is a kind of given across the entire life cycle. So I think the key message over here is that legacy modernization is a strategic imperative. It should not be seen as just an upgrade of the technology. It is about transforming the entire enterprises and make them to work in a very fast, AI-driven world. And I think that's a kind of a key takeaway. Now, that said, let's take a pause. We all know what it is, and I'm sure in your own worlds, you see how imperative it is. But the statistics are quite different, and it's quite staggering. 60% of the organizations are either not able to run the initiatives or they get stalled. 85% of the organizations are not able to see the business value, what they want to have. And it's not about the lack of intent. It's more about the flawed executions that we see. So most of our experience working with customers across different industry segments, it runs into different areas. So it's about poor stakeholder alignment. It's about inadequate change management, legacy debt, we see about it. But one of the things that is very, very core and it's often overlooked is a lack of clear IT strategy. And within that, there are two things which come out. One is APIs. They are extremely important to have a modern architecture for speed, composability, and resilience. And second is AI, the way that AI is now influencing real-term transformation and acceleration. And that's what we'll talk a bit about it in this session. So first and foremost is a big roadblock, limited availability of SMEs. What does that mean? Tribal knowledge, poor documentation. Now imagine that you're running transformations and you know that there's a handful of people who obviously have the knowledge. What that means is two things: risk to the program, Slow delivery, yeah. Now what organizations do is that either they deprioritize those initiatives, or what they get into is what we call it as the API illusion. So which means that you form the 6R strategy, and what you say is, okay, fine, I understand these constraints. Let's now look at either doing a lift and shift, or we build an API facade with the legacy on its own. Now what does that mean? There's marginal gains, and then obviously the technical depth is something that you live up with. The other key factor is legacy brawl. I think very, very kind of applicable to most of us over here. Most of the organizations which are using old platforms, like a MuleSoft, like a TIBCO, like a IBM, those are very tightly integrated and embedded within the IT ecosystem. We talk with a lot of customers across industry segments. The key challenge is they either find it too risky, or many a times they justify to get the ROI out of it. And what that means is that you are now living in a modernized world, which you want to modernize, but you are constrained by so many different areas. So all of these points, they actually lead into a very, very important factor as well, which is it is very, very important to have a clear enterprise API strategy, which many organizations do not have, and we see that as a challenge. So again, what it leads into is what we call it as an integration chaos. There's data which is there, very, very fundamental, and you see that data which is fragmented, it is there in silos. For all the modern applications which are going AI-driven, you really need API as a foundation platform, as a platform for AI to connect business, data, and models. With the lack of this strategy, what that means is you're not able to operationalize AI, and that is one of the key challenges that we have seen as well. And finally, a very, very important topic, slightly close to me, which is GRC, that's government's risk and compliance. Very, very important in today's world, given how API and AIs are actually coming up. So we do see persistent gaps in compliance to regulations, access control, data management. We see regulations and legislations across the globe around AI, which is evolving. US, incidentally, is a bit different. They more rely on federal and state laws. It's more sector-driven. EU has got a centralized EU Act, so that's more centralized regulations which they have got. UK, again, is more fragmented. They are more prone into innovations, and we've seen how it is kind of evolving. So I think the key message over there is that as AI is evolving, there is a big potential for these gaps to lead into either operational risks or reputational risks to the organizations. And this is very, very fundamental, especially when you look at the risk spectrum and you look at all of those high-risk abilities which are being developed, where API has become the core. So I think the key takeaway over here is that for us to have successful legacy and enterprise modernizations, what we need is two things. A very, very, very clear API strategy, enterprise API strategy, and GRC alignment, which helps to bridge the intent with the execution. So with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Vaibhav. We'll talk about the challenges, the key challenges that obviously we spoke about. We'll also talk about our solution accelerators. We've looked at all those challenges, worked with our customers. We've mapped that up. All those solutions have been deployed. They are giving material impact to the implementations. And then obviously, Vaibhav will give a forward-looking view as well. To you, Vaibhav.
Thank you. Thanks, Gurpreet. Yeah, so what so far you have heard from Gurpreet is about why modernization is a mandate, right? And what could be the potential failures that the organizations are failing, right? So what we have seen, and there's a big change paradigm shift in the organization world where the AI adoption is being, very critical, right? The way we see that the AI and APIs, it forms a closed loop, right? I know in the next room there's a session going on by Ash is there is no AI without APIs, right? Exactly resonated, right? So what do we see, right? There are two aspects to it. One, with the introduction of AIs, there is an explosion of APIs as well, where the organizations are able to expose their capabilities, the AI capabilities through APIs. The second, right, how AI is influencing your modernization, which essentially within a modernization there is a part for migration, right? So migration is not separated out from the modernization. For any modernization to happen, migration is also now becoming a mandate, right? So essentially, what we are saying, there has to be a rapid API development. That is a need of the hour, for any organization to do that, right? Right from the reverse engineering going up to the forward engineering, intelligently, reading the API schemas, doing conversions, and adapting your integration workflows, right? AI is always, right? And this is where we are seeing the evolution happening. Number two, transitions to modern gateways, right? Essentially, I think from last 2 days, we have been hearing about Kong as a potential modern gateway, which your legacy API gateways were not able to fulfill your organization needs. When we talk about large scale modernization that is happening through APIs, right? That is another thing that has become an essential. Legacy like TIBCO, MuleSoft, right, or IBM of the world, right, is getting transition is what we are seeing, in the industry. So how do we expedite that process? Migration is essentially is very important part of it, right? Third, API first. I think we all understand API first. We have been listening to from last 5, 7, 10 years, API first, right? Now, this is going transition into AI first API, right, essentially. Number four, AI-driven workflow automation. Essentially, if you are part of the integration world, you would understand what does an orchestration mean. How do I transform the workflows, right? We used to do a decade back, even a low-code, no-code platform like TIBCO and IBM would support it, right? But still a lot of effort is needed to host those business logics into it. Now, with an agentic AI-infused solutions, right? You need to see the workflow automations being done, right? And we are seeing this in the industry being adopted. With these four things, the next one is leading to a GRC. This is, I think we are getting a lot of queries from customers, a lot of disruption that has happened with the smart technology that's being introduced, right? The risk and compliance, right? Like financial services, insurance, healthcare, right? Many organizations are still not very comfortable in adoption of these smart technologies, right? So how do we make sure, right? At least for the API part of this, right? The GRC is being taken care of, right? So that is forming a closed loop between AI and APIs, right? We'll go next. So what we are saying over here is this is a modern blueprint, the forward-looking blueprint that any organization will have it, right? Essentially. Now, agentic AI is everywhere, right? So the way you should be looking at this picture is, right, starting from the APIs to gateway to security, knowledge management, GRC, agentic AI is playing a critical role in accelerating these blocks, building blocks out of it, right? We have seen business APIs, microservices being created, right? That's another part. But with an addition of Gen AI, Edge AI, explainable AIs, right? Those APIs are also now getting into an explosion mode, right? So we need a governance around it. This is where the API gateway comes in, right? You need to have a policy automation, you need to have a risk detection, threat detections, right? The compliance. The biggest problem with the organizations is to how do I make my APIs compliance with the organization needs. Every organization will have their own modes, own challenges, own compliant modes coming in, right? If you go to Europe, you'll have other regulations, you'll have US in other regulations. It's very regional, territorial, right? So you need to have an enterprise API strategy in place, right? Plus a horizontal capabilities which comes from security, DevOps, observability, critical role is being played by AI into it, right? Those days where we used to have a human intervention a lot in doing it, right, is absolutely being looked at by replacing the agentic AI, right? Knowledge management, very important. So if you would have in the first slide heard from Gurpreet that lack of SMEs is a critical failure, in the modernization. A 20-year, 30-year mainframe programmer would have written it. You would not find it right now. So how do we transition that, right? What's the best way to do that? We have to rely on AI. Produce those documentations, right, which becomes a checklist for any developer or an architect to see that what is happening, what has happened in the mainframe part of the world, so that the functionality is not missed out, right? It's important. We can't have too many mainframe developers being sitting together with the modern, AWS or Java or Python developers, right, together working in. It's not going to work out. We need to find out a way to build that knowledge, right? GRC, again, we need to have an integrated framework which is supported by organizations, right? And there has to be a proactive, risk identifications being done. Moving on, what we would like to do is present you Forgex. This is a proprietary being, created by Coforge, right? Our in-house COE team has done it. It's a life cycle, right? Starting from agile planning to product owner agents, doing a API development, doing a reverse and forward engineering, code conversions, up to validation and testing agents and DevSecOps CMS. Whatever I highlighted in the last slide, you would eventually see. Remember I was calling out that the agentic AI has to support these building blocks. This is exactly the Forgex is going to do that, right? This is deployed to one of the largest airline provider, right? Where we are actually using it, this framework, right? For today's session, we want to show you a couple of videos, right? Which is going to be focused on the middle one. One is a code insight, right? How do we extract the specification out of a mainframe code base, right? And then and the second one is actually the API rapid development, where we have another accelerator and other agentic AI infused solution, where we will see that how the migration can really be accelerated. Right?
Code Insight AI by Coforge accelerates legacy transformation with AI at its core. It delivers reverse and forward engineering, deep visibility into undocumented logic, support for multiple complex and legacy languages, a secure LLM-agnostic foundation with enterprise-grade guardrails. It is powered by Agentic AI that understands legacy code, context-aware RAG for accurate business logic extraction, graph databases that simplify code dependencies, human-in-the-loop expertise for efficacy and accuracy.
Let's walk through a real example. A complex code base for a property and casualty management client. Hundreds of services, multiple modules, and thousands of undocumented lines of business-critical logic. Opaque, intricate, and tough to modernize. We create a new engineering workspace in Code Insight AI and upload the legacy code. The platform automatically detects the structure and prepares for analysis. Get the business requirements document, technical specification document, data dictionary, and detailed call graphs in hours, not weeks. This structured and standardized approach is consistent in accuracy and ready for action. The document generated from reverse engineering drives forward engineering, with the ability to decompose a monolithic architecture to a microservices architecture with domain-driven design. SMEs and architects review, validate, and enhance, ensuring the 2B architecture is technically sound and business ready. Finally, the code generation engine kicks in, powered by Agentic AI, creating boilerplate code with embedded API-first design patterns, clean, scalable code and unit test cases in modern tech stacks like React, Angular, Java, or .NET, which is ready for deployment. To make sure it's future-proof, we have enabled an MCP architecture to allow integrations with third-party AI tools and services with Code Insight AI. Our partners are seeing 30 to 40% faster time to market, 20 to 30% productivity gain. Reimagine your core strategic platforms with speed, accuracy, security, and intelligence. Modernize with Code Insight AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sure, so I think this is one of the demos, and here what you saw was a very classical problem. Customer has got legacy code, and what they want to do is transform that, follow an API-first approach, and the key thing is obviously the challenges that we spoke about it, the real application of AI, how do you accelerate all of that, real outcomes that we are able to commit, and that's the uncertainty, because when you actually got to make decisions, you really do not know that what is the timelines, what is the exposure to the risk. Business has got all, obviously, those constraints in mind, and this is where we have actually deployed for multiple customers, and some of the real larger applications where we have churned out almost 7 to 8 million lines of code already with a very high level of precision as well as accuracy, the different metrics that we obviously look from LLM point of view. So that's one part of the puzzle. The other part of the puzzle is within the enterprise, you will obviously have those traditional, if I have to call it, API platforms like TIBCO or a MuleSoft. So again, what we have is an accelerator, which Weber will just be showing. It's an any-to-any converter. So you could have, let's say, a TIBCO, you could have a MuleSoft, and you could have any other API platform which is there. You can then transform into, let's say, a Kong, where we have obviously deployed for a lot of customers. The other key thing that we have kept in mind is that obviously it's not a like-to-like, because a Kong is an API gateway now graduating into an API platform, but at the same time, there also needs to be business services. There also has to be ESB capabilities. So the whole idea of this accelerator is that we do help to actually accelerate the conversions across the implementations which these old platforms have got. And that's been one of the key challenges which our customers have been facing. So we'll have a look at that as well, and then obviously we'll go towards the wrapping up side.
Coforge Integration Studio is a comprehensive singular workbench for APIs and business services that has been designed to simplify and accelerate the transformation of legacy integration systems such as IBM, TIBCO, MuleSoft into cloud-native, scalable architectures. It has been empowering architects and developers working in various projects to build, migrate, and manage APIs and integration flows through AI-infused solution, requiring minimal manual effort. Our proprietary migration automation tool parses legacy ESB artifacts and API platforms to convert into modern lightweight equivalence frameworks developed using languages such as Spring Boot, Node.js, and Python. Users can define source and target directories for transformed code and generate target projects via a single command. Advanced features include structural analysis of legacy code with auto-generated technical specs using GenAI, conversion of legacy definitions into open API specifications, proxy migration from platforms like MuleSoft, Apogee, and DataPower to modern gateways, supporting AI governance, managing multi-LLM modals and MCP servers, role-based login for personalized migration workflows, access to historical conversions, and direct interaction with console logs. Proven to accelerate migration by up to 70% and enhance developer productivity by 40%, Coforge Integration Studio empowers enterprises to reimagine integration, unleash AI, modernize legacy systems, and scale with cloud.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I think that was it. So I think just to wrap it up, what we really wanted to show you was the key challenges based on obviously our experience working with different customers and with partners such as Kong, and also talk about how we have invested in trying to address those challenges. What are the kind of success factors? I'm sure there are a lot of learnings as well, which we keep on taking in as we work with customers in their transformation journey. And then obviously, what is the real outcomes that we are able to bring to the customers? Because that's a very natural thing which we are asked, because you do invest. I mean, we're all investing and we all want a very singular outcome, that how do we accelerate journeys? How do we make our customers more successful? But then the key thing is we as GSIs, what is our skin into the game? What is our commitment with our customer to their modernization journey? And those have been some of the key things where we have put a lot of focus, and the sole intent is to have material impact and to deliver real outcomes which is aligned to the business and IT expectations of our customers. So that was it from our side. I don't know how much time we have got, but absolutely open to any questions which would be. I hope we were good on the timing.
Timing was perfect. We've probably got
Thank you.
1 or 2 minutes if there are any questions.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for the demo. On the first product, does our code get uploaded to your platform? So our code sitting on your platform, is there any kind of way to run it locally, or like just, security concerns about our code just kind of being put into your platform?
Yeah, sorry, I'll maybe paraphrase if I got it right. So is it about the accelerators and what are the security constraints or other things?
So the first example showed that you pointed at your repo and it uploads the code into your platform.
Yeah.
And then your platform's doing some magic.
Yeah, yeah.
So is there a way to run it in such a way that it doesn't upload my code to your platform? Like I want to run it on my infrastructure, or what are the guarantees around the ownership?
Yeah. Excellent question, and I can tell you it is 9 out of the 10 times when we speak to customers, that's the first obvious question, because the thing is, it's an IP of the customer. And when we are looking at the code, we obviously are working on the IP of the customer. So there are 2 ways in which we do that. There's one way in which we actually deploy our utility, our tool set into the customer environment. And there are certain constraints around it. So for example, we might make some calls to different LLMs. It could be GCP, it could be Azure, depending upon different areas. We've also done a lot of in-house usage of LLMs, again, depending on the context. But I think just to answer your question, we deploy in the environment of the customer, so that secures the IP. So we do not take the code away from the customer into our environment. There are also instances where, for example, with different customers like IAG or a HSBC, and I'm sure a lot more HMRC, and where we are tenured, we do have very secure NDAs in place. That's where we do have the flexibility of taking their core out into our environment, because it's a sandbox ODC that we run. So depending upon those situations, but I think the key point is, and absolutely a great question, that's something which is right on top of what we think. You do obviously go through with the paperwork, because if you're using any of the hyperscalers, we obviously have to do some paperwork in place, but we've got a dedicated function which takes care of it. So that's how we make sure that there is no violation of IP or security. I hope that answers your question. Cheers, thank you.